Hey guys, hope you're doing good. In this video, we're going to learn about object-oriented programming in Python. Now, this object-oriented programming concept is not only for Python, it's for many other programming languages like C++, Java, C Sharp, and many other programming languages which we are using now. Now, let us understand what is object-oriented programming. To know about what is object-oriented programming, we need to know what are the four pillars of object-oriented programming. The four pillars of object-oriented programming are abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. Abstraction means providing only the necessary information. It means that when there is an end user, whatever is required for him, showing that alone is called as abstraction. Encapsulation means wrapping up of data and functions into a single unit. As of now, we have seen in the normal Python programming, right? Our functions and data are scattered here and there, right? And if we want it, we need to use it or we need to go and call it separately wherever it is required. But here, encapsulation will wrap up all these data and functions into a single unit and it can be reused at any point of time. Inheritance means acquiring the property of an already existing thing. Now, if I already have a working program which is already there, so instead of doing it all over again, I can acquire the properties of it and use it here in my program, right? And then polymorphism. Polymorphism means single thing acting in many forms. Now, as far as inheritance and polymorphism is concerned, I'll be doing a separate video on inheritance and polymorphism shortly, so that you can find out what is inheritance and polymorphism in detail. Now, we have two more things. One is class, another one is object. This is very important because everything lies on class and object. Now, class is a blueprint which allows us to logically group our data and functions into a single unit so that it can be easily reused. Now, when I say data and functions which are present inside the class, we can call it as attributes and methods. Now, object means instance of a class. Now, let me explain you how to create a class and object and what is the difference between class and instance variable with some example. First, let me tell you how to create a class. To create a class, I'll be using a keyword called as class. Now, followed by the class name. Let the class name be sample. Now, I've created a class. Let me say pass. Now, it means that I've created a class with nothing. There is nothing inside my class. Now, create an object, right? I'll say obj assign with the class name. So, this is how I create a class and an object. This is called as object creation and this is your class declaration. Class followed by the class name, and inside that whatever I give, that will become the members of the class. So whatever data and function, or I can say whatever the attributes and methods that I'm going to give within the class, those are called as members of the class. Now here we call it as members of the class. And now outside the class, when I come outside and I use a class name and I initialize my class name to something, that becomes object. Now here this is called as object. Now this process is called as instantiation, right? So I create an object. So object creation is called as instantiation. Object is also called as instance, right? Object is also called as instance. Now let us see some example of how to create some variables within the class. Like I'm going to give a difference between the class variable and the instance variable, or I can say class attribute and instance attribute. Now let me say val assign 10. Now this variable which I create inside the class, this is called as class variable or class attribute, right? Class variable or attribute, right? So let me create some method. I'll say def set val, and then I'll be using a object called as an self. Now this self, I'll tell you what is that in just a bit, but just understand there is every function, every method inside the class must have a parameter called a self. That's an object. I'll tell you what is that. And self is not a keyword, it's just for a naming convention. You can give anything else there. I'm just using it for a naming convention. So let me say self.val assign 20. Let me create one more method called as get val. As I said already, every method or must have a parameter that must be of type object, right? That is self, right? You can use self. That is always better to use because almost all people like use only self. It is just for a naming convention. I'll tell you, don't worry, what is self, right? So let me say class variable, and then say val, and then say print instance variable, and then let me say one more thing I forgot to give here is the when I want to access any class variable, I may need to use the class name, right? So without the class name I cannot access any variables, right? And if I want to access the instance variable, this variable is called as instance variable. Instance variable or instance attribute. Now here I'll say to access instance variable I'll be using self. So I'll say self dot val. Right. So let me run this code. I've created an object here. As I said already, I've created an object here. Let me run this code for you. When I run this code, okay, there's a small mistake. Okay, just a typo error. That's all. Let me clear this code. And I've created an object. Now let me run this code. The code executed properly without any problem, but nothing happened because I have not called any of these methods, right? Since I have not called any of these methods, nothing is happening. So to call the method, I'll be using the object. I'll say obj dot set val. This is how I call the any function, any method that is present inside the class must be called with the help of object, right? And let me say obj dot get val. So this is how I call the methods. Any method must be called only with the help of object, right? Any class members, any of the class members can be accessed, either it is an attribute or a method. So the class, the attributes and the methods which are present inside the class can be accessed only with the help of object. So without the object it cannot be accessed. Now what is this self? That is what I'm going to explain you. Whenever a method is called, right? So whenever a method is called, it comes here and say val dot self. So this val and a memory will be allocated for this variable val. Where this memory is getting allocated, that is what I'm going to say. So whenever a method is called, the method internally takes one argument, that is my calling object. So whenever an object is getting called, this obj will get passed to self. Now here self will be holding obj, right? So when I say self dot val, it means that I'm allocating memory for the variable val inside the object obj. You with me? Right. And then when I come here, when I say self dot val again, it will go and fetch the value which is present inside my object obj. So self is very important to mention that this variable belongs to this object, right? So when I don't create the self dot val, this becomes a local variable and cannot be used here, right? In any of the members, right? So all the members of the class can be used by anyone else, right? A member of a class can use another member's value, right? For example, let me give a variable called as val assign 30. Now if I am trying to access this val is a local variable and cannot be accessed anywhere, right? This val 30 is a local variable and cannot be accessed anywhere outside this method. When I come out, the value, the memory for this val is will get disappear, right? Will get erased because the scope of the local variable is only within the method. When I come out of the method, the local variable will become unknown. Hope you got it, guys. So that's the reason I'm using a self and say val, so that belongs to the particular object. Got it? So let me run this code for you so that you can understand. You got C class variable, that is val is 10 and instance variable is 20, right? So this val, if I use it here, it will throw error. Let me say local variables value, that is say val. Let me run this code for you. you can see that you're getting an error, name error, saying that that is not defined because val is unknown here. Val is unknown here. We cannot use it, right? So this local variable can be used only within the method where I'm declaring it, but a instance variable can be used anywhere within my class and also outside the class, depends on the access specifier, right? By default, any variable that is declared inside the class are considered to be public, right? So if I want to make it as a private, I have some procedure to do it. I'll let you know what is that. Now, since I said everything is public, let me copy this and try to print the variables which are present inside the class, the members of the class outside the class. To print the class member, I may need to use the class variable, that is class name dot the variable name, and to print the object or the instance variable, I'll be using the object name, that is obj, right? Don't use self here because self is a parameter name here given for the method, right? So I should not use self here. I need to use the object name. So let me run this code for you. Before that, let me clear this and let me run this code for you. You'll get printed twice. It's getting printed twice. One with the help of getVal method. When I use the getVal method, I'm printing it here once. And when I come out of that method, again, these two lines are getting executed and it's getting printed twice. Now, how will I make the variable as a private variable? Any variable, if it is preceded with a double underscore, that variable is said to be a private variable. So now let me make this variable as private variable. Let me say double underscore val, and here also I'll say double underscore val. Now I'm making these two variables as private variable. This is a class attribute or a class variable. This is an instance variable or an instance attribute. Now I'm making this as private variable, these two as private variable. As I said already, private variables can be used or accessed only within the class or by the class members. An outsider cannot access it. Now let me run this code. Before that, let me make some changes here. So these are private variables which I am accessing from there. Let me run this code for you. Now when I run this get method, getVal method is working perfect without any problem because private members can be accessed by the class members without any problem. But if I'm trying to access it outside the class, it is throwing me an error saying that underscore underscore val attribute error. So it is not considering it as an attribute because when I come outside, it is unknown. Any private variable, when I come out of the class and try to access it, it is unknown. It is hidden. Your data which are private variables will become hidden, right, within the class. I cannot use it outside the class. Now let me give you one more example. Let me take this out. It's not required for me. So in this example, I have a class called a circle and I have a variable called as pi. Since I'm going to use it as common for the entire class, I'm creating it as a class variable. So this is a class variable. Pi is my class variable that is initialized to 3.14, right? And I have three methods. One is setVal, area, and circumference. Now what I'm going to do in this program is that I'm going to find the area and circumference of circle in two different methods. And one method is there, that is setVal, where I'm going to get input for my radius. Now let me run this code for you first so that we can understand how it works. Okay, let me say radius as 2. So when I say radius is 2, the area of circle is 12.56 and circumference is again 12.56, almost same. Let me clear this. Let me give us some other value so that we can find the differences, right? Let me say 23, right? So area of circle is 1611 and circumference of circle is 144. Now let me explain you what is happening there in this program. Now I create a object called a C1, right? And I'm calling the function or calling the method setVal, and I am passing C1 to self. So for the object C1, I'm creating a variable called as radius and I'm getting some input. So C1 object will be having a variable called as radius and some information will be stored inside that, right? So when I call the method area with the help of C1, C1 goes to self. And when I say circle.pi, that is the class variable or the class attribute, that is 3.14 will be replaced here. So when I say self.radius, what is self holding now? Self is holding C1, right? So self will be holding C1 as of now, and C1.radius, what I have initialized here, right? So that will come here and then that will be multiplied. That is what happening here, right? So pi r square. And then the same thing for circumference. Now let me get one more object. Let me create one more object, that is C2, and say circle, right? And let me say C2 dot setVal. Now here I am creating two objects, that is C1 and C2, right? So with the help of C1, I am calling the method setVal. Now self, as of now, self will be holding C1, right? As of now, it's like as for the first call function call is concerned, right? Self will be holding C1 as far as this is concerned, right? Now when I say self dot radius, right? For example, let me give the value of radius, right? C1 objects radius is holding, let it be 5, right? And then again I'm coming to the next line. I'm calling the method setVal again, right? I'm calling the method setVal again. Now what is self? Self will be C2, right? Self is not C1 anymore. Self will become C2 because I'm called, whenever I call the function, the object will be passed as an argument internally, and that will be stored inside the attribute called as self. Again I'm repeating, self is not a keyword, it's just a naming convention. It's globally accepted by everyone. Everyone is using only self, right? You can use any variable, any attribute name there, that is any parameter name there, it is up to you, but I recommend using self. Okay, and now when I call the method setVal, it comes here, and then self will become C2 now. So for the object C2, let me I'm going to get some input for radius, let it be 7, right? So when I call the method c1 dot area, right, when I call the method area, it comes here. What is self now? Self will become c1 because c1 is the calling object. When I come here, circle dot pi, that is 3.14, there is no change in that, always it is 3.14. So when I say self dot radius, now let me put it here down, let me comment it. So now circle dot pi is 3.14, and then into what is self dot radius? Self is, as far as this function call is concerned, now self will become c1, right? So when I come out of this function, this self is no more there, so I'll just remove it because it is just a local attribute, local parameter there. So when I come out of the function, self is totally gone, it will no more be there, right? Now what is self? It is c1. What is c1 dot radius? Now c1 dot radius is 5, so it will be 5 power 2, right? So when I again call c1 dot circumference, now here again self will become c2, sorry, c1, and here again let me do it for you again. So when I come here, that is 2 into what is circle dot pi, that is 3.14, and self dot radius, now self dot radius is 5, right? So this is how it calculates, right? So when I call the method using c2, right, when I say c2 dot area, right, so when I say c2 dot area, it comes here. What is c2? What is self now? Self will become c2. Let me put this for c1 object, right, so that for our understanding. So second time when it calls, it will be for c2 object. For c2 object, it is 3.14 into what is self dot radius? Self is c2 now. What is c2's radius now? 7. So that becomes 7 power 2, right? So when I again call the function or call the method using c2 dot circumference, when I do this, it comes here, self will become c2. So this is for c1 object. If I do it again, this will be for c2 object, that is 2 into this pi. Can you see that this pi is never getting changed because it doesn't belong to the instance, right? The pi is the variable, doesn't belong to the instance, it belongs to the entire class. So this variable can be used for the entire class. It is not going to get changed, it is going to be the same till the end of my program. Only my instance variable is going to get changed, depends on the input that I'm getting, right? So here it will be again 3.14 into what is that? 7. Got it? Yes. You have any doubt, guys? You understood how the variables are getting created for instance, right? So that's how that's why we call it as instance variable, right? So instance variable means for every instance there will be a copy of the variable and there will be a separate value stored inside that. Okay, so let me run this code for you. Let me give radius as 5 and then radius as 7. So you're getting this area of circle 7.58 for object C1, and then circumference is 3.4 31.4. And for the second object, that is C2 object, right, because that is what I'm calling the second time, right? For C2 object, the area of circle is 153.86 and the circumference is 43.96. I hope you understood how to create a class and object and what is the difference between an instance variable and a class variable. If at all you have any doubts or queries, please comment in the comment section. I'll definitely get back to you. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.